It's going to be fascinating because we have Carl, Sean and Steve, all three of whom are professional historians. And that's going to provide a very interesting mix, I think, in the ref21 blog. Carl, what can we look forward to in coming weeks on the blog from you? Is there anything brewing in your mind that you want to share with us?
There are a few things at the back of my mind. I'm unwilling to share them on camera. I'm aware that at the moment everything I write and say is overinterpreted by somebody out there, so I'm very careful about what I say, just at the moment. But I'm sure it'll probably feature the Welsh fairly heavily in some kind of negative context. Hard to imagine the Welsh in a positive context, of course. But,
this is on the other side, of course, of the famous Welsh victory in the Six Nations Cup.
A blip. I'm presuming that in 12 months' time normal service will be resumed on that front. So.
Ligon, what's brewing on your mind as we approach the early summer? Are you thinking and contemplating about something in particular?
Well, issue-wise, Derek, I've got my mind on two big issues for the church. One is simply the continuing issue of justification. I think actually that we have turned a corner in the justification discussions that have been going on ecumenically within evangelicalism, and I think the Alliance will be part of a work in which we are able to do something like the International Council on Biblical Inerrancy did some 40 years ago, in which we make a statement that will be helpful to anchor evangelicalism in a faithful, biblical, confessional embrace of the doctrine of justification by grace alone, through faith alone, in Christ alone. And I think that's very, very important. It's vital for gospel ministry that the church be crystal clear on what the gospel is and on what justification is, what its basis is, how it's received, what its products are. And I think, very frankly, there's some well-meaning and brilliant people out there in the world today that are utterly confused on that subject, and that's not helpful for preaching. But the second thing, and I think if I heard these words coming out of my mouth 5 years ago, I would have thought there was something wrong with me. But I think every one of us in the room knows what I'm about to say. I think that we're about to have a season in evangelicalism that may last a decade or more, where we revisit the doctrine of Scripture. And I think it is going to call upon our best minds to devote some significant energy to reaffirming some things that we thought that we had reaffirmed and gotten squared away about 40 years ago, that have popped back up again in evangelicalism in surprising quarters. And we're going to have to nail those things down again. And then I think we're going to have to address some things that we didn't address back in the early 1970s when, for instance, in America, the so-called battle for the Bible was going on. And again, I'm very comfortably confident that the Lord has given us resources in lots of places to help us in that area. But it's going to require a lot of us coming together and addressing that issue.
Sean, anything brewing in your mind as you begin your inaugural blog on Ref21?
Nothing specifically, although I just finished Minority Report a couple of weeks ago and was really interested in Carl's essay where he compared Edward Said with Carl Henry and some of the ways of learning, and particularly Edward's Said? Said, I'm sorry, thank you. And it reminded me of H.L. Mencken, who was kind of my conversation partner because of the influence of my teacher, Darrell Hart. And for similar reasons. So what is the appropriate pose for a historian? Is it simply to be the Minority Report or the prophet, or is there an eschatological aspect of doing history? Does history point God's people to hope because we know the King has in fact won? And so while we're not triumphalistic, which is all too often how optimistic history has been written, yet there's a certain amount of encouragement and confidence, particularly for training ministers. Why do you bother with church history in the theological curriculum? Well, it's to say, if God can use all these broken people throughout time and space, God can use you. And that's a hugely hopeful pose for a historian. So that might be something in the future.
Sean, I hope you're going to bring to the blog a better taste in music than for the last couple of years.
Tell him about Bruce Springsteen. Tell him about Bruce Springsteen.
Last night, as I was tossing and turning, Carl and I are sharing a room.
We won't go into that.
That's a separate matter. But I said, I was this close from grabbing my iPod and turning on the most recent Springsteen album, Magic. It was kind of the way of exercising all kinds of influences in the room. So
I was talking to him at the time. I think he was just trying to block me out.
Well, thank you all for joining us. This is the ref21 blog, and I hope you push that favorites button on your internet source and make ref21 a place to visit frequently. Sean will be joining us, as well as Thabiti Anambwili and Ian D. Campbell and Steve Nichols. Thank you.